In our last video, we exposed the zero stock trap. We showed how automakers and dealerships are intentionally discontinuing the analog parts you need to keep your 20-year-old truck on the road. We told you to stockpile the parts before they disappear. And right on cue, the real-world proof flooded the comments. Viewer David Heine wrote that his 2005 Silverado diesel had the glow plug controller fail, and neither he nor his mechanic could find one anywhere. Viewer Graham Verrett said he is going through the exact issue right now with his year 2000 Toyota 2.8 diesel, and the number on one part does not exist in their computers. The corporate starvation tactic is real, and it is actively bricking perfectly good trucks. But then the master mechanics in the comments spoke up, and they revealed the ultimate unbreakable loophole to the modern automotive monopoly. When Detroit stops making the parts, smart Americans do not scrap their trucks. They bypass the system entirely. Today, we are exposing the Aftermarket Rebellion. Mechanics are intentionally ripping the factory computers out of their trucks, hot wiring their own controls, and using aftermarket engineering to make their vehicles permanently immune to the dealership cartel. Let us start with the brain of the operation, the engine control module. When the factory engine control module in your truck from the early 2000s finally fries, the dealership parts counter will smile and tell you the part is no longer available. They expect you to give up and walk onto the showroom floor to look at a new 2026 model. But as viewer Stuart Winter pointed out in our comments, there is a better way. The answer is Holly. The answer is Haltech. Smart mechanics are abandoning the factory computers entirely and installing standalone engine management systems. You rip out the crusty 20-year-old wiring harness, you pull the dead factory engine control module off the firewall, and you drop in a modern self-tuning standalone system like a Holley Terminator. When you do this, you achieve the ultimate level of vehicular independence. A standalone system does not have a cellular modem. It does not report your fuel trims to a corporate server. You control the spark. You control the fuel. If a sensor goes bad, you plug your own laptop in, read the data yourself, and buy a replacement sensor from the aftermarket. But here is the mechanic's reality check. The dealership hopes you don't know. If you rip out the factory computer, your electronic automatic transmission, such as a GM4L60E or a Ford 4R70W, loses its brain. It will default to maximum line pressure and lock itself in third gear, otherwise known as limp mode. The blue-collar fix? Smart mechanics wire in a standalone transmission controller, or better yet, they swap in a heavy-duty manual transmission with a physical clutch pedal. You completely sever the digital umbilical cord. The rebellion goes much deeper than just the engine computer. It extends to the physical hardware inside the cabin. In our last video, we warned you that physical ignition lock cylinders are being discontinued in favor of hackable push-button smart fobs. The comment section fired back with the ultimate old-school solution. Viewer Knowles wrote that the brass ignition key module could just be replaced with an on-off switch. He is right in theory, but here is the technical trap. If you try to hotwire a 1999 Silverado or an F-150 with a basic toggle switch, the engine will crank, start, and die 2 seconds later. Why? Because of factory immobilizers like GMVATS or Ford PATS. The computer is actively looking for a specific electrical resistance from the microchip inside the factory key. If it does not see it, it cuts the fuel injectors. So how do you bypass it? Mechanics take the steering column cover off, trace the ignition wires, and solder in a 10-cent resistor that exactly matches the factory key's ohm value, completely tricking the security module. Then you wire up your heavy-duty, marine-grade toggle switches and a push-button start on the dashboard. You just replaced a discontinued proprietary locking cylinder with a $5 hardware store switch and a 10-cent piece of copper. The same logic applies to the climate controls. The factory air conditioning and heater modules in these older trucks are failing, and the plastic gears inside the blend door actuators are stripping out. Viewer G. Willie had the perfect engineering response in the comments. He said, I think that the rotary air conditioning switches are just resistors, so one can just put another set of on-off switches and a resistor, so that would be it. This is the mindset of a true owner. An air conditioning blower motor is just an electric fan. It operates on basic direct current voltage. If the proprietary factory climate control module dies and costs $400 used on eBay, you bypass it. You wire a universal rheostat dial directly to the blower motor resistor. It might not look like a factory luxury interior, but it blows freezing cold air, it costs $20 in wiring, and it will never require a software update. But what happens when the factory electronic fuel injection system is simply too far gone? What happens when the wiring harness is completely dry rotted, the factory sensors are obsolete, and you do not want to spend $2,000 on a standalone aftermarket computer? You execute the nuclear option. A viewer named Phantom Charger 568 said in the comments, "If things get that bad, screw all of the electrics, throw a carburetor and distributor on it, and if it is too new for that, gut the whole mess out and drop in a pre-1986 small block Chevy." This is the absolute final boss of the right to repair movement, the carburetor swap. Now, any master mechanic will tell you, you cannot just drop a traditional analog distributor into an LS or Vortec engine block from the early 2000s. They do not have a hole for it, they use individual coil packs. So you have two choices. You buy an aftermarket ignition controller box to fire the spark plugs, while the carburetor handles the fuel. Or you do what the true purists do, gut the engine bay entirely and drop in a pre-1986 small block Chevy Vive 8. When you do this, you erase the need for a computer entirely. A carburetor operates on pure, uninterrupted fluid dynamics and engine vacuum. It pulls fuel into the engine based on the physical velocity of the air moving through it. There is no mass airflow sensor to fail. There is no electronic throttle body to throw you into limp mode. There is no idle air control valve to stick. As another viewer pointed out, if a gasket fails on a carburetor in the middle of nowhere, you can trace a new one out of a cardboard cereal box, cut it out with a pocket knife, bolt it back together, and drive home. You cannot do that with a silicon microchip. The automotive industry thinks they have us cornered. They think that by shutting down the parts supply for the golden era trucks, we will eventually surrender, walk into their showrooms, and accept our new reality as digital subscribers rather than physical owners. They drastically underestimated the American mechanic. We are not just consumers, we are engineers, fabricators, and problem solvers. If the dealership refuses to sell us the part, the aftermarket will build a better one. If the factory computer dies, we will wire in our own. And if the electronics fail completely, we will rip them out and go back to mechanical fuel and spark. The aftermarket is the final line of defense against the digital cage. The tools and the parts exist to keep your analog truck on the road for the next 50 years, as long as you have the grit to learn how to wire them. What is the most extreme bypass or modification you have done to keep an older vehicle on the road? Did you drop a carburetor onto a modern engine or wire up your own ignition? Sound off in the comments below, because your ingenuity is writing the survival guide for the rest of us. If you refuse to be starved out by the modern auto industry, hit the subscribe button to join the resistance. Keep turning your own wrenches, support the aftermarket, and we will see you in the next one.